Good afternoon. This is Jim Whitehead. How are you? Hey, I hope you're having a good Monday. We try every Monday to have a good Monday, so then we get to the end of the week, right? Anyway, thank you for being here. I'm Jim Whitehead, All Power Group and Phoenix Animal. Boy, am I blessed that I can do animals. I've tried a little political stuff here and there, but it just doesn't fit right, to be honest with you. I know that seems to be most of what's happening on YouTube, and I'm definitely considered a G-rated channel. But anyway, today, and this is my second separate part of talking about service dogs. Now, the neat thing is, service dogs take care of people in a variety of different ways. I did one the end of last week. And again, the neatest thing in what I do and going deeper into a lot of these topics is I learn things also. Now, what we found, the one that I did the end of last week, was where they had a service dog that was trained to pick up type 1 diabetes. Now, I have type 2 diabetes, which is something that you generally get when you get older, and it's relatively controllable with medication, so on and so forth. I mean, you got to be careful. You can't eat cakes and all the sweets that you might like, even though I didn't eat too many anyway. But I can't eat any really much at all. But with type 1 diabetes, it's very life-threatening. When I was hospital-based as a respiratory therapist, it would be not uncommon to have a young person in the ICU that was having a type 1 diabetes significant medical episode and would have to be hospitalized. So that was neat that this was for a young girl, and the dog could smell. You and I couldn't, but the animal could smell when this little girl was actually heading toward, even though she might seem initially fine, but she was going into a diabetic crisis. And that's absolutely amazing. Today, we're talking about service dogs that can help people that have narcolepsy. Now, narcolepsy is where, and it happens a lot, where somebody will just, without knowing it's coming, literally fall asleep. And it gets a little scary in general because you could be doing something that's really critical. You could be driving a car, and these are things that where you'd say, wow, you really need to know in advance so that, you don't have to get into a very bad thing. So we've got a service dog by the name Barnaby, and Barnaby can pick up, and you'll see as I get into it, can pick up when his master is starting to get into a narcolepsy episode. So anyway, Barnaby is a golden retriever with a beautiful color. Now, I think they all have beautiful color. He knew the lab better than any other dogs on earth. And here's what we talk about. There's Barnaby, and he's working with a scientist, and I'll get into what the scientist does, but he basically knows in advance when his master is going to just nod off. And, he can help the whole issue. Anyway, his human Dr. Elias Vance was a brilliant astrophysicist who happened to have narcolepsy. Barnaby's official job was to predict the sudden sleep attacks and get Elias to a safe position. Because, if somebody kind of falls asleep and they go onto the floor, they definitely could either be in a bad position, they could be on their arm. There's just a lot of negative things. So Barnaby, he is where he will take care of this. Anyway, and as I said, that he would make sure that when it happens, one, he tries to stop it, but B, he will make sure that the doctor's in a safe position if he ends up going down to, let's say, the floor, yada, 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 yada. His unofficial job was to be silent, furry supervisor of the Stardust Observation Project. So in other words, what's neat about this doctor is he studies, in this case, rogue planets. So the Stardust Observation Project was, where again, he seeks out rogue planets. Now, rogue planets are planets that are technically going wherever they get steered to go. I don't want to say they go where they want to go, but they get steered. As you know, our own solar system, with all our planets, are pretty exact in the sense of the rotation around the sun, and they don't generally change very much, which they shouldn't. It would be a calamity if all of a sudden, one of the planets went off its path and whatever happened. So, but he's working to ensure that we are safe from rogue planets. Now, with a rogue planet, again, it's not necessarily on a specific path. So, and you've seen this on occasion. Somebody might say, well, gee, there's a planet out there that's rogue and it's heading in our direction. And it will be near us in a year and a half. So they can predict a little bit with what's going on, but the point of the Stardust Observation Project is to really make sure they know exactly where it will go. And every time you hear about it, you're like, uh-oh, I hope it's not like this is the end of Earth. Anyway, so what he does, he was just calibrating the spectrograph. It's a machine of gleaming chrome and tangled wires that smelled faintly of ozone. Now, I don't know if you have smelled ozone. I'm sure you have. If you go out early in the morning, you will smell the air. It will smell different, and that's sometimes the ozone showing you what's going on. But anyway, he was chasing the spectral signature of a rogue planet, actually an exoplanet, a discovery that would redefine his career. Don't want to make it sound too important, but it was important. The air hummed with the quiet thrum of cooling fans and data processors, because he's trying to figure out where this rogue planet. Suddenly, Barnaby felt it, that the subtle shift in Elias's scent, a change as faint as starlight that signaled an impending sleep attack. Now, I know you're saying, what does that smell like? Well, if Barnaby could talk directly, he would probably not even be able to tell you, because it's like, we all have what we think. We said, I have a gut feeling, yada, yada, yada. But thank goodness for Barnaby, he can tell for sure that something is coming up. He nudged Elias's hand forcefully with his wet nose. "Not now, Barnes," Elias murmured, his eyes glued to a fluctuating wavelength on the monitor. "Almost there." So he's trying to put Barnaby off a little bit, which, in retrospect, the dog is smarter than he is. And he knows something's coming, and I'm trying to protect you. Barnaby whined, a low, urgent sound. He nudged again, harder this time. But it was too late. Elias, his body went slack, and he began to slump sideways directly toward a rack of delicate, irreplaceable lenses. Barnaby acted instantly. He wedged his sturdy body between Elias and the rack, absorbing the impact as his human fell against it. He licked Elias's face, because he knows, hey, I gotta get this guy up. This lick was another attempt, or desperate attempt, to rouse him, but Elias was deep in the clutches of sleep. Wow, that's scary. That's when Barnaby noticed the new problem. And it's funny, when you have one problem, a lot of times you have two problems, and then so on and so forth. And you kind of go, that doesn't make any sense. But when it happens, it happens. Anyway, what Barnaby found, that a thin, acrid plume of smoke was curling from the spectrograph's main power conduit. And what happened is, the red light, usually a steady blink, was flashing with frantic speed. He had heard Elias's mutter about overheating safeguards, but something was clearly wrong. Now, interestingly, panic was not Barnaby's programming, but improvisation was. You could improvise, in other words. He couldn't wake Elias. He couldn't call for help. He looked from the smoking machine to his slumbering human. Then he remembered a game Elias had taught him, a silly trick for rainy days. What Elias would say on, having fun with Barnaby, fetch the fire safe. Now, the fire safe was a heavy red box on the other side of the lab. Inside, Elias kept his most critical data backups. I mean, even with my YouTube, I back up everything every day. So in other words, if you said, Jim, I want to see this again, I mean, it'd be on YouTube, but I have it saved. Now, that's just good practice. I've been a computer guy for a good long time, and that's what you need to do. With a determined grunt, Barnaby grabbed a thick rope handle attached to the box. Dragging the heavy container across the smooth floor, he pulled it until it rested beside Elias's head. Now, what he was doing, it was where that box is fireproof. So Barnaby's doing the best he can. But he knows that this can protect things from fire. So he's figuring, if I put it in front of my master's head and there is a fire, this might help. Anyway, this box also was one of the most important things in the room. So it had it where it was going to be next to his head and kind of add a little bit of a protection if needs be. Anyway, he turned his attention to the main door. It opened with a large, low push bar designed to accessibility. Gathering his strength, Barnaby leaped, slamming his front paws onto the bar. The latch clicked open. He barked, not a simple hello bark, but a deep, resonant alarm call he reserved for true emergencies. He barked until his throat was raw. And again, Barnaby knows this is what his job is. And regardless whether he's happy, unhappy, hungry, thirsty, he's going to take care of Elias. Now, seconds later, Dr. Chen from an adjacent lab poked her head in. Her eyes widened as the scene. Elias unconscious on the floor, the fire safe pulled protectively beside him, and a wisp of smoke rising from the multi-million-dollar spectrograph. So what she did, she's pretty smart, she immediately hit the main power cutoff and called security. So the good news is Barnaby saved his master, made it where if this got into a fire, he would be somewhat protected. He opened the door and barked and barked and barked. And then this doctor could hear the bark and said, hey, something's wrong. And she went in, she found the problem, she shut the device off. When Elias awoke, firefighters were leaving because, when she saw the spectrograph having a problem, she called the fire department. Dr. Chen was explaining everything to the fire folks. He looked at the smoking silent machine, then at his precious data backups safe beside him. So right then, Elias knew that Barnaby had actually saved his life, saved his work, and had it where, yes, there's some damage to the spectrograph, but no one else is hurt. He was so happy, he knelt down and wrapped his arms around his dog because he knew that he had been saved. And you know, the neat little aside here, all dogs, cats, I can go on and on and on, they're wonderful. And they're wonderful even if they're just there for you, just as a companion. But they're also, when they're taught to do things like this, it's just beyond amazing as to what they do. So, Elias says to Barnaby, "You didn't just save me, Barnaby," Elias whispered into his soft fur. "You saved the stars, too." Barnaby just thumped his tail against the floor, his duty done, ready for the next adventure. And you know, the funny thing when you say adventure, I know some would say, I don't know if I would call this an adventure, but these service dogs, they're trained so well that they just do what they know they need to do. And they're, and this will not be the last time, at least where Elias unexpectedly falls asleep. So we would then hope that everything is good. Anyway, I want to thank you for being here. Again, Jim Whitehead, Phoenix Animal. I love being here, and thank you. By the way, if you don't mind, leave any comments, but also if you've had or are involved with or a family member with a service dog, I would love to hear a little bit about that situation, and it would be appreciated. Anyway, I want to thank you again for being here. Like and subscribe if you can. I know you get tired of people saying that, but that's how we get by on YouTube. But anyway, thank you very much, and have a good rest of your Monday. Thank you again.